Hi, Kelli. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so we're just going to dive right into it here. So could you just tell us a little bit about your background in publishing and, when did you start publishing low content books and how did you get into it?
I started publishing low content books about 3 years ago. I started it really slow because, to be honest, I found it quite boring. And I did it for a little bit and I was like, oh, this is boring. I'll do something else. Did it for a little bit, but it wasn't until, Q4 of 2016, I saw the potential of sales. And I was like, wait a minute. If I can make good money, I can deal with being bored. So then I kept it for longer as a full-time thing, mainly full-time thing. And the rest is history. About a year to 2 years prior, I was doing Kindle publishing.
I'm actually surprised to hear you say that you found it boring to begin with, because I know that you're such a creative person and you just really like making the covers and stuff like that. So was it just sort of like the fact that there wasn't too much going into the interiors that you found boring, or?
I found the upload process boring. Sorry, I should have been more specific. The upload, the description, because after a while I used very similar metadata, so it was just a lot of copy pasting. So that was the part I found boring. It was hard for me to do too many at a time.
Yeah, that part is definitely the most tedious. I know the metadata is kind of, next to creating something that looks good, the metadata is obviously the most important thing. But yeah, it's definitely the most tedious part for me too. So I can totally get that. So you've been doing it for 3 years now, and you're making a full-time income now, right?
Yes, full-time and then some.
That's amazing. So how long did it take to get you to earning that full-time income from when you first started with the low-content publishing?
Probably, we're not counting Q4 because that's an anomaly, but consistently outside of holidays, probably about a year and a half.
Right.
From when I first started. So from the time I did full-time to making a full-time income, it was probably 3 to 4 months.
Okay. So how many hours per week were you putting into the low-content stuff? Because I know you've got a few other things on the go as well.
Oh gosh, when I first started, I worked way too much. Way too much. It was beyond healthy. But when I was getting it going, probably 8, 10, 12 hours a day.
Just on the low content stuff?
Yeah, because living in Ohio when it's cold outside, there's nothing else to do, so why not work hard? So that was my, philosophy. But now I'm working maybe 6 to 8, so much more of a normal schedule.
Right, okay. So if you're putting in that amount of time, I imagine you're doing the entire process yourself. I mean, do you ever outsource it, or are you creating all of your own covers and all of your own interiors?
No, I didn't outsource. I have purchased a few templates recently, but in the beginning, you're right. As you said, I'm a creative person. And so doing the covers and doing the interiors, I didn't want to outsource because I don't want to give someone else a task that I like doing. And I still don't feel comfortable giving someone my username and password.
Right.
So that's why I just suck it up and upload it myself. By no means does anyone have to work 8, 10, 12 hours a day. I probably could have worked less. It's just what I chose to do because it was cold outside and nothing else to do. So why not work?
Right. So if you're putting in that many hours, does that mean you were pumping out a considerable volume?
I was doing 40 to 50 a day.
Wow, 40 to 50. Yeah. What are we talking here? Like line journals?
Line journals, yeah. For the first, ever since up till recently, I've just done blank lines. And it was hard for me to deviate from that because that's what I was having success with. It wasn't until recently that I started doing a little bit more complex interiors, and it wasn't because there's not potential. It's just because I was getting bored. I needed something else to do. besides just lines.
I find that so interesting because, as we've talked about before, like I've really only put up a few line journals, and for me it was just more about getting to know the process. But they've never really been particularly lucrative for me. I've always, gravitated more towards the daily planners. So I just find it really interesting that you've made such a lucrative business out of doing almost strictly lined journals.
I think it's so interesting that there's so many ways to attack this business.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many different options out there. So yeah, I mean, that's really great. So you've been designing all of your own stuff. Do you have any professional design skills?
Oh no, I got a Udemy course. Back in the Kindle days, I got sick of paying $5 for every cover, and I didn't want to wait a week. So I was like, okay, I gotta learn this. I'm still not the best designer. By no means would I call myself a graphic designer. I know the basics and I can get the job done.
Right. So I mean, for someone else, would you recommend, like, hey, as long as you just, have some enjoyment for the process, don't worry about whether or not you're, a professional designer?
I don't think you have to be a professional designer. I mean, knowledge of what looks decent certainly helps. I think that knowing the basics certainly help about like font selection and colors and the basics like that. There's so many different programs out there that I know people use to make covers, like Canva, there's Photoshop, there's GIMP. If it overwhelms you, by all means, there's YouTube, or get a cheap course on Udemy to help you out. But it is a process. By no means are my covers from 3 years ago anywhere near they are now. And I know in 3 years I'll be even better. So
Right. Okay. So what programs do you use for designing?
I use Photoshop for the covers. I have used the cover creator as well in the Create Space and now KDP. And then for the interiors, I use Keynote, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, the Mac version of PowerPoint.
Right. Okay. So do you have any experience using anything like Canva or any of the other programs?
I have my listeners telling me, you gotta learn Canva, you gotta learn Canva. I'm like, I don't want too many programs being bogged down in my head. So I really just want to keep it simple to Keynote for my interiors and Photoshop for my covers.
Yeah, we've all got our own favorites. I mean, I'm just used to using InDesign and Photoshop and Illustrator, but I've played around with Canva because it's just so good for people that, don't really have too many design skills, or, they've never used any design program. And yeah, Canva is actually really, really good. I've been super impressed by that, so that's cool.
Hey, coming from a designer, it must be good.
Okay, so let's talk about niche research. What is your strategy when you're trying to come up with new niches?
It's changed over the years. When I first started, I wanted to look at Amazon and see what people are searching for. And I still do that to an extent. However, I also think of what hobbies do I like, what hobbies do my friends and family like, because there's so many niches and hobbies out there and everyone is so different. So I'm sure anyone has either a friend or family member that has some weird hobby that they could take advantage of on Amazon. So pretty much that, just using my own resources and also going out at the mall and people watching, seeing what people are wearing. I was reading the news for a little bit and trying to figure that out, but that didn't excite me. So I pretty much just stick to what I know from friends and family. But once you also get started and know what sells, you can also deviate from that. So say you, I don't know, have a best-selling camera planner, make a camera and coffee planner, or I don't know, something like that.
Right, so combining different niches.
Yeah, from what is already selling for you. So, and the sky's the limit for that.
Yeah, there's no shortage. I know some people feel as if this entire business model is saturated on Amazon, but, what's the quote here? I've got it right in front of me, Thomas Edison. When you have exhausted all possibilities, remember this, you haven't. And there's just, I think this is just something that's growing more and more each day. And like you said, if you can just tap into those really narrow niches, the really obscure hobbies and interests and things like that, I think there's always going to be room for new niches to get into.
Yeah, I was just talking to someone this past weekend how so many people like writing stuff down nowadays. We have our smartphones, but people love writing stuff down. And this journal business is like $1 million, if not billion-dollar industry. So that's a lot of dollars.
Yeah. So along the same lines of strategy, do you have any keyword strategies that you use?
I do kind of two things, and it's kind of evolved. Well, three. When I first started, I again just went to Amazon and see what people were searching for and used those keyword phrases. I still do that to an extent, but I also just use common sense. Do a little bit of research about the niche and what would someone buying your product search for to try to find your book.
Right.
And I recently bought KDP Rocket, now known as Publisher Rocket, to try to find some niches and keywords. But that's relatively new, and I don't use that software all the time.
Okay, so up until recently, you haven't really used any software at all to help you with keyword research?
No, not really. Just common sense and using Amazon. That's
it. That's good to know, because I think some people are afraid that, when they get into this, they're going to have to start buying tools, and, they definitely can be helpful and cut the time down, but I think it's definitely important to know the basics of doing it just on Amazon, and like you said, just using your brain as to, if I was someone looking for this book, what would I be typing into the search bar? Because those are, the most valuable keywords.
Right.
Yeah. So you mentioned that, you mostly do line journals. Are there any other kind of broad niches, without giving any successful secret niches away? Are there any other things that you've tapped into and had some success with, just broadly speaking?
I don't know if this is too broad, or I'll still share guest books.
Yeah.
Those sell well. And then also just think of people you give gifts to. I mean, this could also be blank lines as well, but who do you give gifts to during the year and holidays? And that's done well for me too.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. So, okay, when you're creating your books, are there specific things that you do to set your book apart from the other books to help yourself stand out a bit more?
I'm learning that because with a lot of people getting into this industry, before I didn't really have to do much of anything, but now I'm learning to add a little bit more quality to the interiors. What would I like? Pretty much thinking quality over quantity, just a different mindset shift.
Right, yeah, okay. And do you have sort of a system that you use for publishing books? Like, Monday you do this, Tuesday you do that?
It's so interesting. I have really worked hard the past few months trying to find a system that works for me. I've tried that, Monday research, Tuesday design, Wednesday upload. Let me tell you, those upload days I really dread. So now I'm just trying to stay consistent and do a little bit of it every day. Maybe I'll spend a whole day on research because that's my favorite part. But if I design something in the morning, I like to try to upload as much as I can that day.
Right.
Unless I'm working on like a low content interior, that might take me more than a few days.
And do you have monthly goals in terms of how many books you aim to get up within a month?
I've changed it to weekly goals, and I changed my weekly goal based on what I did the previous week and what I have going on that week. Now it's summertime. I'm probably taking it a little easy than I used to, but for me, thinking a month in advance can be kind of too long term, even though I know it's really not. So when I just do weekly and then break that into daily, it seems to help me stay focused better.
So how many books are you trying to pump out in a week?
Well, I'm also doing Amazon merch, the t-shirts. So this week, I'm probably only going to do 5. I'm doing this week. I'm going to do 200 shirts. So
Whoa.
those are my 2 goals.
That is crazy.
It's really hard, having a mindset of quantity over quality for probably 2 to 2.5 years. To flip that's what I'm really working on, to be okay if I only upload 5 books in a week or even 1 book in a week. If I can get down to being okay with uploading 1 a week, I think that would be so cool.
Yeah, well, I think for a lot of people, even doing 5 a week probably sounds like a lot in the beginning, because when you're first starting out, it might take you several days to just get that 1 to where you think it should be, and obviously you get quicker as you learn the process.
Time for sure. Yeah.
I definitely don't want people, being intimidated by, oh my God, I've got to, do 5 a day or, 100 a month or whatever it is. So.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not like a numbers thing for publishing, just try to spend an hour a day when you're first starting out. Just stay consistent, and before you know it, 30 days will pass by, and you're like, whoa, this is getting easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So, reviews. Do you consider reviews at all? I mean, is that something that you're paying much attention to?
I don't pay attention to that. They'll come.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't worry about that at all. I have noticed a lot of my older books that still consistently sell do have reviews.
Right.
But I used to do the review swap back in the Kindle days, and I don't do that anymore.
Right, okay. So what about book descriptions? Do you have any tips for creating a standout book description?
I would say use HTML because everyone's so busy nowadays, so if they can see like bullet points, it'll help the potential buyer skim through it and see the important features. And don't overthink it.
Right.
So, I mean, those are probably my 2 biggest tips. HTML, and don't do a long, drawn-out thing. Just give them the basics, what they need to know. Nice, fancy cover, good interior, you're good.
Right, okay.
For the most part.
What about pen names? Do you have a strategy? Do you use multiple pen names? Do you kind of lump things, one niche under one pen name, another niche under another pen name, or sort of like more of a brand under one pen name that includes several niches? What's your strategy there?
Once again, this has changed over the years because I'm just always trying new things. When I first started, I only had 2 pen names. One was for child-friendly journals, and one was for potentially non-child-friendly journals.
Right.
And now I'm trying to still maintain those, potentially still grease the algorithm with those pen names. However, most of my books I'm trying to separate by niche now.
Okay.
1 pen name per niche, or a collection that would make sense.
So when you say niche, is it more like line journals as a niche, planners as a niche, or is it more like a themed niche, like let's say, dogs, and you've got multiple types of right, okay.
Yeah.
All right, and are you collecting email addresses?
No, not for my no content business, no.
Okay. All right, pricing. Do you have any strategies or tips for that? I've noticed in the past, recent year or two, a lot of people are trying to sort of undercut prices and just sort of try to be, the lowest price going within a particular niche. Is that something that you do, or, are you a little bit more willing to have a higher price knowing that your book is a little bit higher of a quality? How do you, what's your strategy behind pricing your books?
A lot of my books are $6.99, but it also depends on the niche. Because, for example, and this is so interesting, I checked my report this morning, and there is one niche. It's a holiday coming up soon, and it's $5 more expensive than the other competitors, but it's my best-selling book right now, and I'm ranked number 1 on the first page. So,
wow, that's amazing.
It's priced $12.99. I guess it's $6 more than the competitors. So I think price is important, but there are some buyers that don't want to buy the cheapest out there. They perceive it as cheap, even though we all know it comes from the same printer, but from a buyer's perspective, they want to have something fancy, whether it's for a party, a gift, whatever. So you just got to play with it. And just like you have succeeded not doing lines, I've succeeded doing lines. There's so many different variations of pricing too.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't shy away from adding $1 or $2 extra onto my products, especially when I'm, just convinced that they're a higher quality. And I think you're definitely right. There's, a perceived value with something that's a little bit higher priced. So I think that oftentimes,
Right.
works in my favor, at least anyways.
And I'd rather spend like a little bit extra time doing the research, because that's my favorite part, if I can find that sub niche that I could potentially price higher.
Right.
So that's the fun part to me.
Yeah. Can you hear the yelling outside right now?
No.
There's always either a siren or somebody yelling, and there's someone yelling out there right now. So hopefully if you can't hear it, then... Okay, so I'm assuming that you use Author Central for your pen names.
I used to. I don't update it anymore because, this was probably a year to a year and a half ago.
Right.
Amazon removed one of my author names because their excuse, and this was one of my major ones that I've had since day one. I was diligent about updating the books every single week, and one day I went to log in to do my updates, and it was gone. And I was like, what the heck is going on? So I got in contact, and they said that company names are not supposed to have Author Central names. I don't know if that was a lie. I'm not really sure. But ever since then, I haven't done anything with Author Central, and my sales have not diminished at all.
So, hold on. So, you had a company name that you were using as an Author Central name?
It wasn't like an official company, but it wasn't like John Smith. It was not, it could not be perceived as a person. And according to this worker at Amazon, I'm not sure if he was for reals. I'm not sure if he just wanted me to get off the phone. He said that Author Central is only for authors, not for brand names. Since then, I've seen so many new brand names on Author Central, so that's why I'm like, I don't know if he was telling
all of
truth.
My pen names are brand names, and they all have Author Central pages.
Ever since then, I was just like, with some expletives that I will not just like, I'm not going to do any more updating. So, and my sales didn't reflect it. So,
wow, that's so interesting.
That's why I'm like, why take the time? I would be more than happy to revisit it once I do more low content books and have more low content branding.
Right.
But when I was pumping out the quantity, it just wasn't worth my time.
Wow, okay, that's really interesting. Yeah,
Sorry, I went on a rant there.
No, it's just so interesting. I mean, we all know that Amazon's terms can be vague at the best of times. So, I mean, it's interesting to hear something like this. On the one hand, it's not surprising.
I guess just the moral of that, for me, I would advise anyone, don't rely on Author Central for like your main website. Don't use that as a website you send your customers to on a daily basis. And, don't have it reliable because it's Amazon. It could be taken down at any time.
Right. Okay. So that brings me to another question then. Do you have all of your products on your own website?
No, I just rely on organic traffic for the most part. I do have some ads, but organic traffic has been my main method since probably the end of last year.
Okay, so can you talk to me a little bit about advertising then? Because this is something that I haven't actually experimented with yet, but I will just for, data purposes. But what types of advertising have you experimented with for your low content books?
I've only experimented with Amazon advertising. I don't put too much money at all towards it. I'm not sure all specifics I should go into on this, but I don't invest much at all. I treat it like gambling. If I go to the casino, I wouldn't mind if I'm down $1. Right. And that's, I just do $1 a day, 10 cents a click, bid. I don't even know. I just put in numbers, and I treat it like gambling. I will say it's not like I make millions from it. I don't even make thousands from it, but I am in the green as far as profit from running ads. So, but I think with ads, it's something you really got to be mindful of, because there was like 2 or 3 days I didn't check my ads, and I think I spent like $3 or $4 and didn't have a single sale. Some people would be okay with that. If I spend $1 and don't make a single sale, I cut the ad.
Right.
So.
Okay, so when you started the ads, did you notice a boost in sales?
Yes. And I just, like I said, I just press buttons and treat it like gambling. I don't really spend much time on it, because I don't think the hourly return for me, especially since the low content books, a lot of mine are priced just with a $2 profit, is really worth it. So I just do a little bit a day. I really try to stay mindful of how much time I spend on it.
Okay, so when you're setting your price, is that something you look at, is what your royalty is going to be? Is that another way that you determine your price?
It really never, when I determine my price, I don't ever think about ads. But when I'm running an ad, if I know the price is only a $2 profit, I'm a little bit more stingy. I do have some ads running that, have a $3, even $5 profit. I'm like, oh, okay, if I spend $1 with no sales, let's see if I can get to $2. So I say I would pay attention more with the ads on my profit as opposed to vice versa. Okay.
So have you used any other marketing methods besides paid advertising? Like, I know I've heard of some people starting to use things like Pinterest, things like that.
No, I haven't. It's, with me transitioning to more low content, I've considered it, but I don't want to think too far ahead. I want to get the books up, and if they do well, potentially I would consider doing Pinterest, but only if they start selling.
Yeah, I mean, this is totally, unknown territory for me either. I think, because I've been able to have such decent success without all of those things, it's not something I've kind of thought too much about, but, I'd definitely love to do some experimenting just to be able to have something to report back with.
Yeah, I think with me really loving research, I could see myself spending hours and hours on Pinterest doing,
well, yeah, that's easy to do anyways. Pictures. Yeah, Pinterest is definitely a bit of a, it's a vortex. It's a rabbit hole that you can fall pretty deep into, so.
Right, and I really think that the organic sales to me mean I have something right, whether it's the cover, the description, the keywords, something. So I want to make sure I'm selling at least a copy before going into those avenues.
Right. Okay. So back to overall strategy. You've been publishing low content for 2 or 3 years, you said. What has shifted, if anything, in your overall strategy? I know you touched on a couple of things earlier on in the conversation. You had talked about going more toward quality over quantity, things like that. Is there anything else that's shifted for you, just in terms of overall strategy?
I mean, it's mainly just because lines to low content, because I want to do something different, and also just doing the blank lines is a much lower barrier of entry, and I want to keep doing this business for a while, so that's why I'm transitioning over to the low content versus just being bored and pumping out lines after lines after lines.
Right. Okay.
If you would have asked me 6 months ago, maybe 8 months ago, if I would be advertising, I probably would have laughed in your face. So that's definitely changed as well, being more open-minded to paying to playing in the Amazon world.
Right. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about mistakes that people make. Are there specific mistakes that you see people that are first starting out sort of doing over and over again? Could you just touch on a few of those and, just, I guess, give some tips to people listening about things to avoid in general?
If you pick a niche, whatever, that's awesome. But make sure it's proven before you pump out a lot. There's an author right now, or publisher, whatever, you might have seen him in your research, one specific niche. It's like a 13th birthday guest book. 200 of them. None of them have, hardly any of them have sold. There's no need for that. I'm sure that took a lot of time for this person to upload it. Maybe not if they're using software, but that's beside the point. Don't publish too many in a niche that's not proven. I will emphasize that forever.
Wow. Did you count how many there were?
Yeah, because they had volumes.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, and I saw all the pages. Ooh, I went on a rant on this one, too. Sorry. Let's see. And have the customer in mind, too. You know, I get questions. Should I publish this in a 6x9, 8.5 by 11, you know, yada, yada. If you give the customer too many choices, the chance of them not buying is greater. So keep that in mind as well. Yeah, it costs $0 for you to publish a book, but it's cluttering up the Amazon catalog, and it just doesn't look good for your brand.
Right. Yeah, okay. Any other mistakes you see people making?
Doing what everyone else is doing. You know, I tried, because we were in a mastermind for a little bit, I tried doing your suggestions sometime, and it didn't work. And, you know, just because it worked for me, it might not work for you guys, and vice versa. So always be learning, and don't be afraid to go outside the box and the norm, because you might get a really big hit.
Yes, I think definitely. Experimentation and trial and error really are the name of the game. Like, yeah. You really are going to have to put out a bunch of duds before you get to something good, I think.
Yes.
And, you know, you can't let that discourage you. It's every single book that you publish is just a learning process. And, you know, if this doesn't work, okay, what can I change with the next one? And, you know, that's never going to stop, you know.
No, and I think the theme of all my answers were like, it's changed over the years. Don't be afraid to change. Never be that person. Well, it worked 1.5 years ago for me. Why isn't it working now?
Right, yeah. So. It definitely changes very quickly.
Yeah.
So, do you have any just general tips for people that are just starting out or, you know, just thinking about giving this a try, but, you know, maybe just a little bit unsure of what to do or, just any general tips?
Just get started. Don't overthink it. I see a lot of people overthinking it, and just try it. It's one of those businesses that you learn a lot by publishing. As long as you know the basics and, you know, don't put out like hate speech or, you know, the basics of what not to do, just get it out there. And once you get a few going, your confidence will get better. You'll start, you know, finding all these awesome niches, and it'll be awesome.
Cool. Well, that's all I've got question-wise for you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know people are going to find this really, really useful. Before we sign off, though, where can people find you? I know you've got a YouTube channel that's really successful, and you're putting out tons and tons of great content all the time, which I am working my way through as well, and I've already been, I'm like, why was I not looking at this like last year? I've already learned so many good tips, and I'm like, oh my god, I could have been implementing this like a year or two ago. So I don't know why I just didn't even.
You're so kind.
It's true, and I know that everyone's going to find all that stuff really useful. So just tell people where you're at and where you can be found.
My YouTube is Kelli Publish. That's Kelli Publish. That's pretty much it. And I also have a Twitter at Kelli Publish. Feel free to join me on YouTube. I do lives Tuesday at 12 Eastern Time and 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And yeah, thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much.